Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome to Steven Universe Revisit. Today's episode is Season 1, Episode 24, Indirect Kiss. I am one of your hosts, Trans Panda, currently fronting the illustrious Dr. Jekyll, and this is Alex.
Hello, everyone.
Wonderful. Today's episode feels like a bit of a special case. Should we just get on with the description of the episode, or do you think there should be anything special we say ahead of time, Alex?
Yeah, let's just synopsisize first. I have a lot of compliments about this one.
Oh, right. So let's synopsisize, which is ironically what is currently happening in the episode, because it is told mostly in media res. It starts out with Connie and Stephen attempting to have a picnic, but Stephen is very clearly, severely, and overtly depressed. Connie, interested because Stephen is her friend, tries to set up just like a conversation starter and notices that there's a new fence around the cliff. She asks why, and Steven says, "Oh, Amethyst was messing around, and then she fell off the cliff and hit a boulder." The end. And Connie goes, "That's it? There's got to be more to that." Yes, but Amethyst got her gem cracked upon hitting the boulder on the bottom of the beach, which starts leading her to have. I can really only call them as a glitchy. Would deformities be the appropriate word in this situation, Alex?
Deformities? Sure.
I
She
suppose so.
starts deforming, I'd
For me,
say.
I suppose that's true, yes. The crack in her gem causes her body to start reacting, and, it's how the hardware of a computer starts making things mess up in a video game. That's the best way I'm going to put it, because it is quite accurate. Uh, but yes. Stephen is distraught by this because Amethyst is clearly getting worse health wise very rapidly. But Pearl and Garnet specify that they used to have an ability to heal the gems, but ever since that was through Rose herself, she felt great emotions over the people and living things around her. So she would cry and it would heal anything alive and back together again. But Stephen doesn't seem to have that quite yet, so they need to go to a fountain where she. It's a good thing they never specified how they got all those tears there, but there is apparently a fountain filled with Rose's tears somewhere on the world. I'd like to imagine how all those tears got in there, Alex. Do you think she was reading something like really sappy and do you think she was watching like one of those melodramas, Alex?
Hmm. I want to actually give a joke answer and say that Rose Quartz doesn't know how to read, but that might be a little too mean. Um, it's just kind of based on the fact that Steven doesn't have an education. He only has like a music education, which I'm going to bring this up again. He is a very talented musician. I'd even say he's better than Greg. Um, but I think Rose Quartz is a very talented person.
Indeed, she can cry on command, it seems.
Mm.
Or could cry on command. Anyway. But they managed to get to the fountain, and it has been completely and utterly overrun by thorns and bristles and all that bad stuff that
That
homeowners
are
associate
alive, by the way,
that are definitely
interestingly enough.
alive. This is what homeowners associations are warning you about when you don't mow your lawn. uh, but Pearl and Garnet attempt to find a way into the fountain post haste, while Amethyst body continues to deform. She had been speaking in reverse audio up to this point. I'm going to have to check on the wiki if they have like a list of. Oh yes, yes they do have. But yes, she has backwards messages essentially. I can see which ones especially stick out to me when appropriate. But she then, what would I call this? It's like she attempted to do Rayman with the no limbs thing, but it's just that the parts of her body just sort of the limbs stretched out and the parts of her body at the ends of it stayed the same size, and they kind of look like the stretchy sticky hands that you would use to like slap against walls or annoy people, which I suppose is fitting for Amethyst considering her whip. Wouldn't you say, Alex?
Oh, I didn't say anything.
Oh no, I said if you think it's fitting that they become like sort of whip-like or stretchy.
Oh. Yeah, actually, the gems getting hurt is an interesting topic because they all have very different responses to pain. Pearl had a very different response to pain. Amethyst had a different response to pain. Garnet seems to mostly just tough it out, but we will probably see her responses to pain in the future as the series continues.
Indeed. Speaking of pain, Stephen has been attempting to make himself cry through sheer force of will to heal Amethyst through this whole episode. Uh, Garnet and Pearl, Garnet specifically, punches a boulder so hard it breaks through all of the thorny vines. They manage to go into the fountain where it is currently dry. So Pearl and Garnet go back to try to find another way to get the tears flowing. When Stephen sort of has a moment where, due to a rose quartz statue in the middle of the fountain, he laments and is depressed by the fact that he can't have the powers that she currently has. Which I don't know if this is in response to his emotional lashing out, but the vines and thorns wrapped around Rose's statue erupt and start attempting to attack Amethyst and Stephen. Once again, always trim those bushes. Always make sure there aren't too many crops on your field, say the homeowners association, for this will happen to you. The bushes will start moving and attempt to attack you, lest you try to find shelter in the only place you can, under your mother's statue. Et.
This
Uh,
episode brought to you by the Homeowners Association.
I feel I could make a pun there, but I don't exactly know. That would be spoilers for later in the series. But
It would.
regardless, it would. It would. Uh, I'm glad that you knew what I was about to make a joke about. But uh, Stephen finally, like having a really emotional moment, manages to get some tears out and just manages to get a tear onto Amethyst gem right in the nick of time, and then nothing happens, and he goes, "Come on!" And then the tears start flowing from Miss Rose Quartz's fountain, healing all of the thorny, bristly vines into yeah, just flowers, honestly. Like, much like the visual in the last episode, we sort of saw a similar motif. It was Lars and the Cool Kids, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. So this is a consistent motif with Rose Quartz, that something about her will cause things to bloom, even post mortem. But Stephen, overjoyed, even overjoyed with Amethyst is now back to normal and healed, sees Garnet and Pearl come back in. I'm going to briefly mention this, that their arms are entwined with flowers, roses landing in their hair. It could mean something, it could not. I'm just going to say that earlier Pearl was clutching Garnet rather hard, and I didn't think of it much, but when their arms are entwined, I went, Hmm. And by me, I meant Alex and not me. So I would love to steal that moment. Anyway, Guardian.
Take everything I have, why don't you?
Okay, yay. Speaking of taking everything and stealing someone's thunder, Garnet and Pearl, uh, coming back, reveal that they just unclogged something for the fountain, and it was most likely them who were the ones who made the fountain start flowing, which transitions into Stephen asking if they really believe that, and Pearl says something like, something along the lines of, "Oh, Stephen, you'll never have powers. You'll never be one of us, and we don't want to ever be associated with you ever again." And then Connie, because as I said, this was an episode of Synopsis, says, "She didn't say that." And Stephen, we cut back to the present day where Stephen goes, "Yeah, but that's basically what she would have said." And he's lamenting and stuff that he doesn't have powers like his mom and all that. But this is where something that had been building over the course of the episode happened, where uh, earlier Stephen had traded his juice box that he was sucking on. What was the fruit that he was drinking? Actually, it looked like a durian or something like that.
I
Uh,
couldn't tell you.
it looked like either a pineapple or a durian. That was quite interesting. But basically, Connie just starts flinching after drinking the juice one more time, trying to comfort Stephen, and takes off her glasses, feeling something's wrong with them before revealing that she can suddenly see again. Her eyesight has been healed. And Stephen jumps up and goes that he doesn't have healing tears, he has healing spit. And he's overjoyed. He's wondrous. He takes Lion back to tell all the crystal gems. And we don't follow him back, but we see in rare moments when a character has a POV that Steven doesn't see, Connie.
Holy crap.
Yes,
Holy crap.
that I think this might be the first one, actually, if I'm not mistaken, because
This
we
might
were just.
actually be the only time this happens.
I'm not sure, but it's definitely because we were like lamenting this last episode, if you recall, and like I
Yeah.
actually wanted to make a comment on this when like the beginning of the episode started. That part of why I think people feel this, what I'm going to call Steven perspective fatigue, is that
Actually,
every
that's a really good term.
yes, every episode starts with the crystal gems going, "We are the crystal gems," not Steven and the crystal gems. It goes through them and it shows that Steven is like a new and underdog type figure, but we still expect to see "We are the crystal gems." But of course, back to Connie. I'm just merely clarifying further on the points made last episode, and how not strictly showing from Steven's point of view can actually be narratively good, because we see while Steven is like celebrating this, Connie honestly rightfully freaked out, like takes her glasses back, and which are rose tinted glasses, and pops the lenses out just so only the frames remain. And we kind of get a solemn moment before the episode ends, just seeing Connie now healed sight, while Steven is unaware that this was a what I can only describe as like very like borderline disturbing thing to do to someone on accident moment has passed. And that is the episode. So, Alex, what did you think of it? My dear friend.
Oh, yeah, I actually have a lot of compliments about this one. This was a really good one.
Yes, indeed. I think a lot of the style and animation were quite well executed, but you personally had more thoughts on that than we did.
Yeah, okay. First of all, Amethyst cracked gem. I believe we already talked about this, but the crystal gems' responses to pain is very interesting. Yes, yes, yes. Pearl says a very interesting line in the episode that we can't get into the full meat and potatoes of, but she calls the vines that are growing out of Rose Quartz's fountain directionless, pathetic, clinging things,
Hmm.
which will come back later. It's actually going to come back soon, and it's going to hit all of us very hard in the stomach. She's also
And
the most disturbed she's ever been so far.
indeed, I will say it's already quite objectively obvious that this line is tying back to the crystal gems. Although in this episode, it's more so being directed at Pearl because she's saying the line as she's clutching Garnet very hard and needing of supports, which when she goes like, "Oh, we'll find a way, right, Garnet? Everything will be fine, yeah, right, Garnet, right, Garnet?" And then Garnet shrugs and goes like, "Yeah," just very calmly. So
Mm.
it does show that Pearl has been the most off her game, and possibly because this is something that can only genuinely, from her perspective, can only really be solved by rose quartz. I did actually want to mention something because you,
There is something morbidly depressing about that.
yes, it is a bit sad. And like we said, what she said will tie back to that. And we could probably clarify further on how all of this has, uh, what has been going down ever since such an event. Uh,
Yeah, R- Pearl is the crystal gem who is very much. Well, we can start talking about it just very, very gently here, since this is baby steps. But it's
mhm,
clear that Pearl is the most upset by the death of Rose Quartz. It
indeed.
also does come off that she was the closest to Rose. We can't talk about it now, but this is definitely going to be recontextualized for the worst later.
We'll see how it goes. Again, I believe this was after I personally left, so we'll see how everything happens. I will say I felt like I was going to say something about Peril, but my brain keeps jumping back to the fact that we were talking about the animation, and something that I thought was very interesting is that when Amethyst was breaking, you can very much see a holographic glitching effect happen around Amethyst's body, which shows that their outer forms are just further confirming that their outer forms are projections of physical light, which was shown in the episode where Pearl poofed the Stephen and the Sword Fighter. Yes, the one that I accidentally wrote as Stephen and the Sword Filter still. I don't know how I did that. But regardless. Yes. I'm going to, since we're still on Amethyst, I think it's a good time to mention Amethyst backwards messages. Let's see how we go. But I can't. No, they seem pretty inconsequential in the greater scheme of things. I just wanted to make Shovel sure to check. But there is, of course, the one where she's attempting to communicate to Garnet and Pearl that the vines are alive and attempting to kill Steven, but nobody understands her. So that's lovely.
Hmm.
What else? There is one moment. You saw the moment where when after Stephen was lamenting and he fell into the then filled fountain, that Rose's statue appeared to move towards him.
Hmm.
I don't know if that's saying anything. I I don't know if this is something to comment on. I don't because
It's an interesting observation.
it's an interesting observation. I am merely speaking again as the person who was brought on to this podcast to discuss the potential ramifications of plurality. Stephen is in an interesting situation where he is human, but he is also kind of his own mother at the same time because of how gems work.
Oh boy.
I'm again, I'm not saying that there is any meat to this. There is not
Oh
like
no, 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 no. I'm that oh boy was just in response to the whole to the very strange biology that the series presents. It's like I didn't know if that was if it was exactly the correct time to bring this up that Stephen is technically also his own mother, but
it
that's
is
just what you get when you don't clarify the biology.
it is left intentionally vague, and I don't exactly blame them, but I'm simply mentioning the statue moving as a case of
Alter.
yeah, potentially not alter, but just like echoes of rose quartz in the psychological in Steven Universe's mind, because he's not just lamenting a woman he never got to meet. He's lamenting like a woman who went through a psychological death to turn into him, essentially, which actually I could potentially make a comment on the potential like plural psychology of that. I mean,
I think there is something to be said about that.
there is potential something. I would have to
We
think
would
about
need
it
to save it for
more.
actually one of the episodes where Steven is in Rose's room. We
I
should save
think
it for then.
I think that's a good point. I actually that's another good point. In Rose's room, we heard Rose's voice before Steven even knew what her voice was. And I don't know if that's something else, but again, I'm just laying it down that I could see there being the potential for like psychological echoes of Rose existing within Steven. And in systems, there's something called fragments, which are not quite all the way there. Oh, sorry, terribly sorry. Excuse me.
It's alright.
Fragments are like they're still parts of a system, but and this it honestly depends on system to system. We don't fully understand what a fragment is ourselves because I don't fully know if we have them. We probably do, but they're they're sort of like this,
We'll
where they
see if
are.
fragments come up during this podcast or sometime in the future.
That's a good point. I just simply wanted to mention it with rose quartz because that seems to be the most likely candidates of what I could classify as a fragment of something that sort of is there, but not quite fully at the same time, which is interesting in the grand scheme of things. But I think that's all that I should discuss when it comes to plurality in this episode. I'm honestly surprised I managed to get some out of this one. I'm a little surprised, but I guess that's what happens when you create a new human being out of parts of another older one.
Much like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
I'm a bit of that time, if you know what I'm saying, dear Alex.
Yes, Jekyll, yes.
Oh, from my source of glass scientists, I know quite a bit about a certain Frankenstein, but perhaps you should check it out yourself, dear listeners. Or viewers, I suppose, if you really like looking at this single JPEG for a very long time.
Well, we're gonna actually have another shot in there, but
Oh,
I'll get to it when we get
yes!
to it. Okay, Stephen
Yes.
questions his relationship with Rose. Well, Jekyll actually did a very good diegesis on Stephen and Rose's very uh, rocky
Complicated.
relationship, to say the
Aha,
least.
Rocky.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I was talking about like their crystal gems, so they have
Yeah.
rocky relationships.
Yeah. It's a double joke. It's a rocky joke, and the fact that they're rocks.
Hooray!
Yeah. Okay, shot composition. Okay, there's actually a lot of really great shots in this episode. The storyboarding is very strong, the emotions are communicated very strong. This episode is very, very strong when it comes to its visuals. It's nice to look at, it even looks good. I think this is the episode of the show that I would say has finally come into has started to really blossom in visual language. It's definitely this one.
In more
And
ways than one.
oh, absolutely. Okay, and then there's this one shot of Rose with a bunch of like vines coming out of her going to attack Amethyst and Steven.
Indeed.
We can't talk about this yet, but as someone who has watched the entire series, this is the greatest moment of dramatic irony that the series has ever presented. It's so, so funny. As someone who was there and saw the discussions, and as someone who watched the show, it perfectly captures what Rose Quartz is. An
And
extremely controversial character that nobody knows how to have a discussion about.
like me, who isn't fully versed in it, so I don't know how to have a discussion with it either. Haha!
Well, Rose
Alonze!
Quartz, she's not really a character as much as she is a monolith.
That is true.
And with a legacy character, you, they're the things that they did in the past are much more important than what they currently are to the audience and the characters. They have history, they have all of this context behind them. There is so much weight to characters like Rose Quartz that whose actions just reverberate throughout the entire series. It's really hard to even summarize Rose Quartz because she's everything all at once, and at the same time, nothing because she's dead.
Indeed. And somehow alive at the same time. She is an enigma. She is deceased and yet mortal at the same time.
Actually, I don't think Rose is an enigma because when we meet her, I will have when we see her for the first time, I will actually have some things to say about the kind of person she is.
All right. Well, I'm certainly looking forward to it. I mean, it definitely makes sense for Rose, considering she is literally a essentially ageless being who has been on Earth for Lord knows how many years at this point. Truly, like when we look at this and look at her big statues made of her, it may come across as sort of potentially vain or something like that. But on the other hand, she was the leader of a group for eons, like probably possibly over thousands upon thousands of years. So who can truly say how long she's been here to justify all of these things being created in the grand scheme of things?
True, true. Also, Stephen heals Connie's eyes.
This is. I am curious to hear your thoughts about this, not just because you also need glasses. Interesting. I'm going to actually say this. I am somebody who needed glasses at one point due to my own diabetic conditions, because insulin infusion actually causes you to lose vision in the first couple of weeks you start taking it. So I have actually gone through a period of needing glasses and then no longer. On top of that, I am curious because we are personally a fan of the artist Weird Al Yankovic, and he himself has gone through laser eye surgery to correct his own eyes, so that there is a somewhat real world precedent to healing eyes, quote unquote. But I am just laying the groundwork, and I'm going to let you take it from here, Alex, because I am merely providing flavor context if you wish to bounce off of those.
The thing about magical cures to disabilities is that it can send the wrong message to people who don't have those disabilities. Like, it's not inherently bad to present Connie getting her eyes fixed, or quote, or Connie quote unquote getting her eyes fixed. But
Which
the
I thought
problem,
was interesting because they're not exactly broken wrong. That's how they were. They're not. It's interesting because in a system like, say, Dungeons and Dragons, if you heal someone, their eyesight doesn't heal because that's just how their body is.
The problem is that it's a very complicated conversation, but the main problem at the center of it is, quite frankly, the American healthcare system. And it
Ex-
presents all of these unrealistic ideas of what medicine looks like and how it should be. Like, it's nice to be optimistic about everything, but there's this stalwart and somewhat, no, not somewhat, very dangerous idea of romanticizing cures that can actually lead people down really dark paths. It's how, like, a bunch of movie stars in the 60s started taking drugs prescribed by their doctors to help them, like, quote unquote, act better and to just meet their quotas on time. And because of this irresponsible application of medicine and drugs, it killed a lot of people. Marilyn Monroe was one of the most famous cases of this happening. Um,
I did actually know that that was one of the reasons why. I did not know that.
yeah, she overdosed on medications that doctors prescribed to her so she could meet deadlines. In the last years of her life, she came to her shoots late. Her behavior was erratic, and she did everything that she could to try and maintain her staying power. But unfortunately, the drugs just ended up killing her because they because it wasn't done in moderation, and plus they didn't actually care about her. That poor woman. She was a
Yeah,
really cool person too. Marilyn Monroe was a very smart woman, and she died by the hands of of a neglectful healthcare system that did not actually care about her.
it had a goal in mind, but the goal itself was questionable and harmful to the actual people who had to go through it.
The way this episode prevents the way this episode presents Connie just being healed by Steven is just blindingly romantic in all the worst ways. Like, I understand why it happens, but in a real world context, it's just so dangerous to present ideas, unhealthy ideas about medicine and unrealistic ones about medicine and healing that can quite quickly turn ableist if not handled properly. And that's kind of a pitfall that this episode falls into.
And it is unfortunate, yes, because I could very simply see an alternative where perhaps I I know they wanted to do their rose tinted glasses metaphor and that she was taking
Yeah.
them off, but like you said, could this have not been, oh, uh, Connie Connie scratched her finger or something, and Steven did the, assume thing where you like kiss it better or something like that, and then it just heals like that because it's coming from his mouth,
Mm.
which is a little bit of that. I will say I completely, as somebody who is plural themselves, we are intimately familiar with the idea of having something where the main goal in medicine is to cure it, not to not maintain, but deal with it reasonably, if that
Yeah.
is the correct way to go about it. I am currently being prescribed ADHD
Toxic
medication.
poxit it's like toxic positivity, I would say.
That's a good way to go about it. This system is currently being medicated for ADHD medication, but I have seen that the doctor who has been prescribing it to us seems to be more doing it to try to cure our plurality than to actually deal with our
Oh
ADHD.
no.
No, I'm very quite positive. I went to it on the basis of, hello, I think I have very strong problems with executive dysfunction disorder. I have many symptoms that line up with ADHD, and like blah blah blah. I went through the whole an ordeal and stuff like that, and then I passively mentioned that I was plural for my own psychological tree, and then every question past that was about plurality and not about ADHD, and that that was
Yup.
a mistake on our part. But it goes to show that like and we went out of our way to go, like when we started sensing it was starting to happen, we tried going out of our way to go, oh no 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 no, we've been plural for years, we have been absolutely positively stable, this does not have to do with our executive dysfunction disorder, this has been a the executive dysfunction has been a problem longer than we've been plural, and plurality has done nothing but help organize our emotions and keep us together more than we were when we were convinced we were not plural. But we're not stupid. We know when somebody's focusing on if you hear voices or such and what have you. We're not stupid. And
Christ.
I wish to back up what you're saying here, Alex, because you are correct that whilst the metaphor here is perhaps in a bubble makes sense, we don't live in a bubble, do we? We don't live in
It's
a Steven
very
Universe
naive,
bubble.
yeah.
And it's funny because the whole point is that Connie is seeing reality for it while it is, while Steven is being naive. But there is somehow another layer of naivete layered on top of that from the very essence of Steven Universe itself. Perhaps not as strong as Steven is in this moment, but it is something worth commenting on, yes. I
Yeah.
guess another thing we could. How many other characters in the show have glasses, actually?
Well, I believe Connie's father wears glasses.
Well, we haven't seen him yet, so that's zero, is what you're telling me. um.
Ronaldo wears glasses.
Oh, yes. So zero characters is what you.
Disclaimer, we do not hate Ronaldo. We just do
Yeah.
not think he was a very good addition to the show.
Sorry, that was. I couldn't resist that one. I had to throw in a little bit of a jab. I'm
No,
sorry.
he's not a very good character.
All right, all right, all right. This is something that we've noted when it comes to characters with disabilities. If you are seeking to possibly heal them or other such manner, here's a very easy way to get around the potential hypothetical problems coming along that. Have more than one person in the main cast have the same disability.
True.
That's usually all you need to do. For example, myself, when we are writing plural content, do you know what we do when we handle complicated topics when it comes to plurality? We write
I
more than
don't
one.
know, Jekyll. What do you do when it comes to writing complicated topics about plurality?
I usually write more than one system interacting to foil and or contrast with the current focal system of choice.
That's an interesting solution, and it sounds very thought out. It also sounds like you are very comfortable with your plurality and do not need to be changed based on the ideas of people who are writing from an extremely naive perspective.
Indubitably.
Boy, that was not related to this episode at all.
Oh my.
I'm just talking about my last comment. It's just a little sardonic response.
Oh, yes, indeed. But yes. That's actually, I think, all I have to say about this episode. Like, other than the blink and you miss it, disability problems, I did genuinely like it. I'm terribly sorry. Hey, I am terribly sorry.
It happens.
It happens.
Unfortunately, it does be happening.
It does be happening. I do believe that's everything we have to say. We did like the episode overall, and we thought
Yeah,
it
this
was
is one of
very
the
well done.
stronger ones. It's too bad it had to end like that.
But yes, I think that's. Would you say that's all for today, Alex?
Yeah.
All right. Well, as usual, I am Trans Panda, currently fronting Dr. Jekyll, and you can find us at Trans Panda Art on both Tumblr and Twitter.
All right, I'm Alex. You don't need my social media. Patreon will be linked in the description.
And that should be all for today, and tune in next time for Season 1, Episode 25, no, 25,
25, yeah.
25, Mirror Gem.
The
Thank you for,
introduction of a lot of people's favorite character.
yes, the dog.
The
Anyway.
dog!
I had to come up with the character on the spot to try to think of something.
Well, there
but,
is a dog. There's Dog Copter. I can't believe you spoiled Dog Copter, Jekyll. How could
oh
you?
no! Like a Jekyll myself, I've been spoiled to the canine ways. But anyway, thank you for existing all, and to all a good night.
Good night, everyone.
If I could begin to be half of what you think of me, I could do about anything. I could even learn how to love like you.